Hey folks, before the video starts, please leave a like and subscribe to cheer me up. Make sure you are relaxed and enjoy today's stories. My brother works for the evil elite on the dark web. His next quest cost our family's life. Hey everyone, I've never really posted anything like this before, but I need to get this off my chest. I feel like I'm losing my mind, and maybe sharing my story will help me make sense of it all. This is a long one, so buckle up. My brother James and I have always been close. Growing up, we did everything together. We shared secrets, fought bullies, and supported each other through thick and thin. But things changed after he graduated college. He became distant, always locking himself in his room, glued to his computer screen. He said he had a new job, something about cybersecurity. I didn't pry. I trusted him. A few months ago, I noticed strange changes in his behavior. He became more paranoid, always looking over his shoulder and keeping his phone locked with multiple layers of security. He'd spend hours in the basement, sometimes emerging with a haunted look in his eyes. One night, after a few beers, he let it slip. He was working on the dark web. He didn't go into detail, but he said he was involved in some serious shit. He was part of a group that did the dirty work for the so-called elite. They paid well, and he couldn't resist the money. I begged him to quit, but he just laughed it off, saying it was too late for that. I didn't push him, thinking maybe he was just exaggerating or trying to mess with me. Then things got really weird. My parents started receiving anonymous threats. Letters would show up at our door with cryptic messages and gruesome photos of mutilated bodies. They were terrified, but James insisted it was just someone trying to scare us, nothing more. He seemed to know more than he let on, but every time I confronted him, he'd shut down or get angry. One night, I heard him arguing with someone on the phone in the basement. He was yelling, something about not being able to do it, that it was too dangerous. I crept down the stairs to eavesdrop. His voice was shaking, and I heard him say, "My family's innocent. Leave them out of this." The next day, he was gone. His room was empty, his computer wiped clean. He left a note saying he had to go away for a while, that it was for our safety. I didn't believe it, and I felt a pit of dread in my stomach. I knew something horrible was about to happen. 2 weeks later, it did. I came home from work to find the front door ajar. Inside, the house was trashed, furniture overturned, pictures smashed, and a sickening smell of blood in the air. My heart pounded in my chest as I called out for my parents. No answer. I rushed upstairs, and my world shattered. They were in their bedroom, or what was left of them. Their bodies were mangled, almost unrecognizable. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Blood splattered the walls, and symbols I didn't understand were scrawled everywhere. I fell to my knees screaming, my mind unable to process the horror in front of me. The police arrived, and I told them everything I knew. They took me in for questioning, suspecting I might have been involved, but I was released after a few days when my alibi checked out. James was still missing, and no one had any answers. Days turned into weeks, and I was a wreck. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I started drinking heavily, trying to drown the images burned into my mind. One night, in a drunken stupor, I decided to search the dark web. Maybe I could find some clues about James, or the people he worked for. I downloaded Tor and spent hours navigating through the twisted, shadowy corners of the internet. I stumbled upon forums discussing secret societies, human trafficking, and other unspeakable acts. Then I found it, a site called The Quest. It was a live streaming platform where people could watch and bet on various quests carried out by the elites and forces. The quests range from stealing valuable items to assassinations, and there, in one of the videos, was James. He was dressed in black, his face obscured by a mask, but I recognized his voice. He was part of a team tasked with breaking into a mansion and stealing some documents. My heart sank as I watched him move with military precision, taking out guards and hacking into security systems. This was what he had become, a pawn in their sick game. The next video was even worse. It was titled Family Ties. I clicked on it, and my blood ran cold. It showed our house, my parents, the whole horrifying scene. They had recorded the murder and were broadcasting it for their twisted audience. I watched in horror as masked men tortured my parents, forcing them to reveal information about James. When they refused, they were killed in the most brutal way imaginable. I vomited, my body shaking with rage and grief. These monsters had taken everything from me. I had to find James, to confront him, and put an end to this nightmare. I reached out to an old friend of his, a hacker named Alex, who reluctantly agreed to help me. We spent days tracking down leads, following digital breadcrumbs left by James. Finally, we found a location, a warehouse on the outskirts of town. Alex warned me it was dangerous, but I didn't care. I needed answers. That's how I ended up here, in this abandoned warehouse, clutching a baseball bat, my heart pounding in my chest. I can hear voices echoing through the empty corridors. I know James is here, and I'm going to find him. I don't know what I'll do when I see him, but I can't turn back now. If I don't make it out of here, please someone, expose these monsters. They need to be stopped before more innocent lives are destroyed. I crept through the dimly lit corridors of the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and something more sinister. Blood, maybe. Every shadow seemed to move. Every creak of the floorboards set my nerves on edge. I tightened my grip on the baseball bat, trying to steady my trembling hands. The voices grew louder as I approached a large metal door. I pressed my ear against it, straining to make out the words. They were arguing, heatedly. One voice was unmistakably James's. The other sounded like a man in his 40s, gruff and commanding. I couldn't catch everything, but I heard enough to know they were talking about me and my parents. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for whatever I was about to face, and pushed the door open. The room was filled with bright, blinding lights, and it took a moment for my eyes to adjust. When they did, I saw James standing in the center, flanked by two men in black tactical gear. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow and lifeless. He looked like a ghost of the brother I once knew. "James," I said, my voice shaking. "What the hell is going on?" He turned to me, a flicker of recognition in his eyes, quickly replaced by cold detachment. "You shouldn't be here, Alex," he said, his voice flat. "This is bigger than you can understand." One of the men stepped forward, a sadistic grin spreading across his face. "Looks like we've got ourselves an uninvited guest. What should we do with him, James?" James hesitated, and for a moment I saw the brother I grew up with, the one who protected me from bullies and shared his deepest secrets with me. But then his expression hardened. "Take him to the basement," he said. "He needs to understand." The men grabbed me roughly, dragging me down a set of stairs. I struggled, but their grip was ironclad. They threw me into a dank, dark room, slamming the door behind me. The only light came from a single flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. I could hear rats scurrying in the corners, their squeaks echoing in the silence. As my eyes adjusted, I saw a makeshift operating table in the center of the room, stained with blood and other unidentifiable fluids. Tools lay scattered around, scalpels, pliers, saws, all caked with rust and gore. My stomach churned at the sight, bile rising in my throat. The door creaked open, and James walked in, carrying a laptop. He set it down on a rickety table and gestured for me to come closer. Reluctantly, I complied, my eyes never leaving his face. "This is what I've been involved in," he said, opening the laptop. "Watch." The screen flickered to life, showing a live feed from multiple cameras. I saw rooms filled with people, some in cages, others strapped to tables, their screams muffled by gags. Masked figures moved among them, carrying out unspeakable acts of torture and experimentation. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. It was like something out of a horror movie, but this was real. These were real people, suffering unimaginable pain. "Why, James?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Why are you doing this?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "They have something on me, Alex. Something I can't escape. They control everything. If I don't do what they say, they'll kill me. And they'll kill you too." I felt a surge of anger. "So you're just going to let them? You're going to let them destroy our family?" He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. "You think I have a choice? You think I want this? They're everywhere, Alex. They see everything. There's no way out." I shook my head, refusing to accept his defeat. "We can fight them. We can expose them." James laughed bitterly. "Expose them? You have no idea who you're dealing with. They control governments, corporations, the media. They're untouchable." Just then, the door burst open, and the gruff-voiced man from earlier stormed in. "Enough!" he barked. "We don't have time for this." He grabbed James by the collar and dragged him out of the room, slamming the door behind them. I was left alone, my mind racing. I had to find a way out, had to stop them. I couldn't let my brother be lost to this madness. Hours passed, maybe more. Time lost meaning in that hellhole. I searched the room, looking for anything that could help me escape. My fingers brushed against a loose floorboard, and I pried it up, finding a small tunnel underneath. It was a tight fit, but it was my only chance. I squeezed through the tunnel, emerging in a narrow hallway. I moved quickly, trying to remember the layout of the warehouse from when I'd first entered. I needed to find James and get us both out of there. I reached the main room again, peeking through the door. James was there, alone, his head in his hands. I slipped inside, grabbing his arm. "We need to go, now." He looked up, startled, but nodded. We moved quickly, avoiding the guards, making our way to the exit. Just as we reached the door, alarms blared, and the warehouse was flooded with red lights. "Run!" I shouted, and we bolted into the night, bullets whizzing past us. We didn't stop until we were deep in the woods, panting and gasping for breath. James collapsed against a tree, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, Alex. I'm so sorry for everything." I knelt beside him, hugging him tightly. "We'll figure it out. We'll find a way to stop them. Together." But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The real fight was yet to come, and I wasn't sure we were ready for it. The woods were eerily quiet as James and I huddled together, trying to catch our breath. The night was cold, and the dampness of the forest floor seeped through my clothes, chilling me to the bone. I knew we couldn't stay here long. The elites and forces would be searching for us, and it was only a matter of time before they found us. "James," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "we need to keep moving. Do you know anywhere we can go? Somewhere safe?" He nodded, wiping his eyes. "There's an old cabin about 5 miles from here. We used to use it as a safe house. It's stocked with supplies. We should be able to lay low there for a while." We moved through the forest as quickly and quietly as we could, every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves making my heart race. The darkness seemed to close in around us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. James led the way, his familiarity with the terrain guiding us through the maze of trees and underbrush. After what felt like hours, we finally reached the cabin. It was small and weathered, nestled deep in the woods, almost invisible in the darkness. James pushed open the door, and we slipped inside, bolting it behind us. The interior was sparse but functional: an old wood stove, a rickety table and chairs, and a couple of cots in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was a refuge from the nightmare we'd been living. James rummaged through a cupboard, pulling out some canned food and a bottle of water. He handed them to me, and we ate in silence, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know more about what we were up against. "James," I said, breaking the silence, "you need to tell me everything. Who are these people? What do they want?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "They call themselves the Consortium. They're a shadow organization made up of the world's most powerful and influential people. They control everything: politics, finance, the media. Their reach is global, and they operate in complete secrecy. Their goal is simple: to maintain and expand their power at any cost." I listened, horrified, as he explained how he had been recruited. It started with small jobs, hacking into systems, gathering information, but it quickly escalated. They threatened him, coerced him, until he was doing their bidding without question. The more he tried to resist, the tighter their grip became. They use fear and intimidation to control their operatives, he continued. And if that doesn't work, they resort to blackmail. They have something on everyone: secrets, crimes, things that could ruin lives. They collect dirt on everyone they encounter and use it to keep them in line. I shuddered, realizing the full extent of the danger we were in, and the people they kill, the families they destroy. Like ours. Why? James's face darkened. To send a message. To show that no one is untouchable. They eliminate any threats to their operation, and they do it in the most brutal, public way possible. It's all about maintaining control through fear. I felt sick to my stomach. These weren't just criminals. They were monsters, hiding behind the veneer of respectability and power, and we were now their targets. "We need to expose them," I said, determination hardening in my chest. "We need to find a way to bring them down." James shook his head. "It's not that simple, Alex. They have eyes everywhere. We can't trust anyone." "Then we'll do it ourselves," I insisted. "There has to be a way." He looked at me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "There is one thing. They keep records of everything, every transaction, every job. If we could get our hands on that, we could blow their operation wide open." "Where do they keep these records?" I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. There's a secure facility, deep underground, heavily guarded. It's virtually impenetrable, but I know someone who might be able to help us. An old contact, someone who knows their systems inside out. Who? I asked, leaning forward. Her name is Katya, he said. She used to be one of their top hackers until she went rogue. She's been hiding ever since, but if we can find her, she might be able to help us. It was a slim chance, but it was all we had. Do you know where to find her? James nodded. She's in a small town about 50 miles from here. It won't be easy getting there without being seen, but it's our only shot. We spent the rest of the night planning our next move, mapping out a route to Katya's hideout and gathering supplies. As dawn broke, we set out, leaving the safety of the cabin behind. The journey was treacherous, every step fraught with danger. We stuck to back roads and forest paths, avoiding main routes and staying out of sight. The town where Katya was hiding was small and nondescript, the kind of place where strangers stood out. We had to be careful. We found her living in a rundown motel on the edge of town under a false name. She was wary at first, but when James explained who we were and what we needed, she agreed to help. Katya was a genius, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she hacked into the consortium's systems. She showed us blueprints of the facility, security protocols, and potential entry points. It was a fortress, but she assured us it could be done. As we prepared for the infiltration, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Paranoia gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside. We had no choice but to press on. The night of the operation, we made our way to the facility, hearts pounding in our chests. We slipped through the shadows, avoiding patrols and cameras. With Katya guiding us remotely, we navigated the maze of corridors and security checkpoints. We reached the main server room, and James started downloading the files we needed. It felt like an eternity, every second dragging on as we waited. Suddenly, the alarm blared, and the room was bathed in red light. We've been compromised, Katya's voice crackled through the earpiece. Get out of there now. We grabbed the drive and ran, dodging bullets and guards. It was chaos, a blur of noise and fear. We barely made it out, escaping into the night with the evidence that could bring the consortium down. But as we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were far from safe. The consortium wouldn't let this go. They'd hunt us to the ends of the earth. Our only hope was to go public, to expose their crimes to the world. But could we do it before they silenced us for good? As we sped down the dark highway, I realized this was only the beginning. The real fight was just starting, and I wasn't sure we were ready for the horrors yet to come. We drove for hours, the adrenaline still pumping through our veins. The car was silent, except for the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle from Katya's voice in the earpiece. She had gotten out safely and was heading to a secure location where she could continue to assist us remotely. James and I were on our own now, racing against time. We need to find a place to hide, James said, breaking the silence. We can't go back to the cabin. It's too risky. They'll be looking for us everywhere. I nodded, gripping the steering wheel tightly. What about an old friend's place? Someone who's off the grid? James thought for a moment, then nodded. There's someone. An old army buddy of mine, Marcus. He lives in a secluded area about 20 miles from here. If anyone can help us, it's him. We made our way to Marcus's place, a small fortified cabin deep in the woods. He welcomed us in, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. Marcus was a tough, no-nonsense kind of guy, the kind you wanted on your side in a fight. He listened as we explained the situation, his face growing grimmer by the minute. "Jesus, James," he said, shaking his head. "You've gotten yourself into some serious shit. But if you've got the evidence, we need to get it to someone who can do something about it. Someone with enough power to take these bastards down." "That's the plan," I said. "But we need to stay off the radar until we can figure out the best way to release this information." Marcus nodded. "You can stay here for as long as you need. I've got supplies, weapons, and a secure line of communication. We'll figure this out together." For the next few days, we stayed hidden at Marcus's cabin, trying to come up with a plan. Katya worked tirelessly from her safe house, decrypting the files and finding contacts who could help us. The information we had was explosive. Names, dates, transactions, and even video footage of the consortium's activities. It was enough to bring their entire operation crashing down. But the consortium was relentless. They hacked into our communications, sending us threatening messages and taunting us with videos of their latest victims. They wanted us to know they were coming for us, and they wouldn't stop until we were dead. Every night I lay awake, listening for any sound that might indicate they had found us. The paranoia was eating away at me, and I knew it was only a matter of time before they closed in. Then one night, everything went to hell. I was in the living room, going over the latest intel with Marcus, when the power suddenly went out. The room plunged into darkness, and I heard the faint hum of a generator kicking in. "Stay here," Marcus whispered, grabbing his rifle and heading for the door. "I'll check it out." I waited, every second stretching into an eternity. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened for any sign of trouble. Then I heard it, a muffled shout, followed by the sound of gunfire. I jumped up, grabbing the nearest weapon and rushing to the door. As I stepped outside, I saw Marcus lying on the ground, blood pooling around him. He was still alive, but barely. "Get out of here," he gasped, his voice weak. "They're here. Go, now." I looked up and saw them, shadowy figures moving through the trees, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were closing in fast, and I knew we had to move. I ran back inside, shouting for James. "We need to go. They're here." James grabbed the drive and our bags, and we bolted out of the back door. We ran through the woods, the sounds of our pursuers growing closer. Bullets whizzed past us, and I could hear the sickening thud of bodies hitting the ground as they closed in. It was a nightmare come to life, and there was no waking up. We stumbled upon an old abandoned barn and ducked inside, hiding behind stacks of hay. I could hear them outside, their footsteps crunching on the gravel. They were searching for us, and it was only a matter of time before they found us. I held my breath, praying they would pass by. But then I heard a voice, cold and familiar. Come out, wherever you are." It was the gruff-voiced man from the warehouse, the one who had dragged James away. "We know you're in there. Make it easy on yourselves and come out now." James and I exchanged a look, our options running out. We couldn't stay hidden forever, and we couldn't fight them head on. Then I remembered the tunnels beneath the barn, old smuggling routes from Prohibition days. If we could find an entrance, we might have a chance. "Follow me," I whispered, and we crept through the shadows, searching for the trapdoor. We found it in the far corner, hidden beneath a pile of rotting wood. I pried it open, and we slipped inside, closing it behind us, just as the barn door burst open. The tunnel was dark and musty, the air thick with the smell of decay. We moved as quickly as we could, guided only by the faint glow of James's flashlight. The sounds of our pursuers faded behind us, but I knew they wouldn't give up. We had bought ourselves some time, but not much. We emerged from the tunnel into a dense forest, miles from Marcus's cabin. We were exhausted, battered, and bruised, but we were alive. We needed to keep moving, to find a new place to hide. But more importantly, we needed to get the evidence to someone who could use it. Someone with the power to take the consortium down. As we stumbled through the forest, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. We were running out of options, and the consortium was closing in. They had already taken so much from us, our family, our friends, our sense of safety, and now they were coming for us. But we weren't going down without a fight. We had the evidence, and we had each other. And as long as we kept moving, kept pushing forward, we still had a chance. The real question was, how much were we willing to sacrifice to bring them down? And how far were they willing to go to stop us? As the night stretched on, and the darkness closed in, I knew we were about to find out. We wandered through the forest for hours, exhaustion and fear gnawing at us. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, set my nerves on edge. James and I knew we couldn't keep running forever. We needed a plan, a way to get the evidence into the right hands. Our only hope was to find a journalist or someone in law enforcement who could be trusted. As dawn broke, we stumbled upon a small, dilapidated cabin hidden deep in the woods. It was abandoned, but it offered temporary shelter. We barricaded the door and windows as best we could, then collapsed on the floor, too tired to move. James opened his laptop and began decrypting the files further, looking for anything that could give us an edge. "We need to find a way to broadcast this information," he said, his voice hoarse. "A place where they can't shut us down." "Like a public event," I suggested. "Something live, where they can't control the narrative." He nodded. "Exactly. There's a press conference tomorrow in the city, a big one. If we can get there, we can broadcast the files live. It's risky, but it might be our only shot." I agreed, knowing the dangers, but also understanding the urgency. We spent the rest of the day planning our move, resting as much as we could. As night fell, we set out again, making our way towards the city. By the time we reached the outskirts, the streets were quiet, the city sleeping. We found an old, run-down motel and checked in under false names. The manager barely looked up, too engrossed in his TV to care. We barricaded ourselves in the room and tried to get some rest, but sleep was elusive. The next morning, we made our way to the press conference venue. It was a large building, bustling with activity. Reporters and cameras were everywhere, and security was tight. We needed to find a way in without drawing attention. James spotted a service entrance and we slipped inside, blending in with the workers. We made our way to the main hall, hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. My heart pounded in my chest, the fear and adrenaline making my hands shake. As the press conference began, we moved closer, staying out of sight. The room was filled with journalists, cameras, and important-looking people. The speaker took the stage, and the event began. James set up his laptop, connecting to the venue's Wi-Fi. "It's now or never," he whispered, and I nodded, my stomach in knots. He began uploading the files, streaming them live to every screen in the room. The images and videos from the consortium's archives flashed across the monitors, horrific scenes of torture, murder, and corruption. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as people realized what they were seeing. Security noticed us almost immediately, but it was too late. The information was out, and there was no stopping it. As guards closed in, we made a run for it, darting through the crowd, hoping to lose them in the chaos. We burst out of the building, but the streets were swarming with consortium operatives. They had been waiting for us, anticipating our move. We were surrounded. "There's nowhere to go," James said, his voice filled with despair. "They've got us." I looked around, my mind racing. "We can't give up, not now. We need to split up. It's our only chance." James hesitated but then nodded. "Be careful," he said, and we took off in opposite directions. I ran through the streets, weaving through alleys and back roads, trying to stay ahead of my pursuers. I could hear their footsteps, their shouts, but I didn't look back. My only focus was to keep moving, to survive. I found myself in an abandoned warehouse, the same one we had infiltrated weeks before. It felt like a sick twist of fate. I hid among the debris, trying to catch my breath, listening for any sign of James. Minutes passed, then hours. The silence was deafening, and I feared the worst. Just as I was about to move, I heard footsteps approaching. I tensed, gripping a piece of metal I had found as a makeshift weapon. But it was James. He looked battered and exhausted, but he was alive. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They won't stop until we're dead." We moved together, supporting each other, making our way through the city. We found refuge in an old abandoned church, the sanctuary offering a moment of peace. "We did it," James said, collapsing onto a pew. "We got the information out. The world knows now." But as we sat there, the weight of our actions pressing down on us, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The consortium was powerful, and they would stop at nothing to reclaim control. And then, as if to confirm my fears, the doors of the church creaked open. Shadowy figures slipped inside, their movements silent and predatory. "James," I whispered, my voice trembling. "They found us." He looked up, his eyes wide with terror. "We fight," he said, standing up, ready to face them. "We fight until the end." And as the figures closed in, I knew that this was our last stand. We had exposed the darkness, but the battle was far from over. The real horror was just beginning, and we were about to face it head on. I bought love poison from the dark web. Now I can't get rid of woman. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but bear with me. A few months ago, I did something incredibly stupid and frankly desperate. I bought a love potion off the dark web. Yeah, I know how it sounds. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from a bad horror movie or a shitty young adult novel, but it happened. I was lonely, okay? Really fucking lonely. It all started after my last breakup. She left me without much of an explanation, just said she needed space, and that was that. I spent weeks trying to figure out what went wrong, but eventually, I just gave up. I tried dating apps, bars, clubs. Nothing worked. I was spiraling, and the loneliness was suffocating. One night, I was drunk and browsing Reddit when I stumbled upon a thread about the dark web. Most of it was the usual shit. Drugs, weapons, fake IDs. But then I saw something that caught my eye. Guaranteed love potion. The post had hundreds of upvotes, and the comments were filled with testimonials from people claiming it had worked for them. I was skeptical, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on the link, and it took me to a sketchy-looking site. The potion was expensive, but the reviews were glowing. People swore it worked miracles. In my drunken haze, I decided to go for it. I placed the order and paid with Bitcoin, then promptly passed out. A week later, a small, unmarked package arrived at my door. Inside was a tiny vial filled with a thick, pink liquid and a note with instructions. 1 drop in any drink. Effects will be immediate and permanent. Permanent. I should have paid more attention to that word. I didn't have anyone in mind at first. I kept the vial in my drawer, thinking maybe I'd never actually use it. But then I met Hannah. She was perfect, smart, funny, beautiful. We hit it off instantly, but she had a boyfriend. That didn't stop me from thinking about her constantly. She was all I could think about. One night, we were out with a group of friends, and I couldn't take it anymore. I slipped a drop of the potion into her drink when no one was looking. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I just wanted her to like me, to notice me. It worked. Almost immediately, her demeanor changed. She laughed at my jokes, touched my arm, and gave me that look. You know the one. By the end of the night, she was all over me, and I felt like I was on top of the world. We started seeing each other regularly. She broke up with her boyfriend and moved in with me within a month. At first, it was amazing. She was everything I ever wanted, attentive, loving, passionate. But then things started to get weird. She became clingy, obsessively so. She wouldn't let me out of her sight. If I went to the bathroom, she'd wait outside the door. If I had to go to work, she'd call me every hour just to check in. At night, she clung to me so tightly I could hardly breathe. Her love, if you could call it that, grew more intense with each passing day. She started talking about marriage, kids, and a future together. She planned everything down to the smallest detail, and it scared the shit out of me. This wasn't normal. This wasn't love. It was something else, something darker. One night I woke up to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, just staring at me. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, and she had this unsettling smile on her face. I love you, she whispered, over and over, like a mantra. I tried to pull away, but she grabbed my arm with a grip like iron. I love you. I love you. I love you. I didn't know what to do. I started avoiding her, but it was impossible. She was always there, always watching. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Her eyes became sunken and hollow, but that smile never left her face. I love you. I thought about telling someone, but who would believe me? Hey, I bought a love potion off the dark web, and now my girlfriend is obsessed with me to the point of madness. Yeah, right. Then things took a turn for the worse. One day, I came home to find my apartment trashed. Furniture was overturned, pictures were smashed, and there was writing on the walls. In her own blood she'd written, I love you, over and over again. I found her in the bathroom, hunched over the sink, carving my name into her arm with a kitchen knife. I tried to help her, tried to stop her, but she fought me off. She was screaming my name, screaming that she loved me, that she'd do anything for me. I managed to wrestle the knife away from her and called 911. They took her to the hospital, and I thought maybe, just maybe, things would get better, but they didn't. She was released a few days later, and she came straight back to me. She broke in while I was at work, and when I came home, she was waiting for me. I love you, she said, her voice raw and broken. I love you so much it hurts. I didn't know what to do. I was terrified of her, but I couldn't leave. She'd find me. She always found me. I thought about destroying the potion, but I was too scared of what might happen to her if I did. What if it drove her even more insane? What if she hurt herself? Or worse, hurt me. Every day was a nightmare. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I was constantly on edge, waiting for the next outburst, the next declaration of her twisted love. I felt like I was losing my mind. And then, one night, she was gone. I came home, and the apartment was empty. No sign of her. I should have been relieved, but I wasn't. I was terrified. Where had she gone? What was she planning? I searched everywhere, called her friends, called her family. Nothing. She had vanished without a trace. I didn't know what to do. I felt like a weight had been lifted, but I was still on edge, waiting for her to come back. A few days later, I started getting the notes. At first, they were just slips of paper left on my doorstep. I love you. I'm watching you. I'll never leave you. Then they started appearing inside my apartment, even though I changed the locks. I love you. Forever. Together. I was at my breaking point. I couldn't take it anymore. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow, jumping at every little noise. I didn't know how much more I could take. And then, one night, I woke up to find her standing at the foot of my bed, holding a knife. Her eyes were wild, and she had that same unsettling smile on her face. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much. I tried to reason with her, tried to calm her down, but she wasn't listening. She lunged at me, and I barely managed to dodge her. We struggled, and somehow I managed to get the knife away from her. But she didn't stop. She came at me with her bare hands, screaming that she loved me, that she couldn't live without me. In the struggle, I killed her. I didn't mean to. It was self-defense, but she was dead, and I was covered in her blood, and I didn't know what to do. I called the police, and they took me in for questioning. I told them everything, but they didn't believe me. Why would they? It sounded insane. A love potion? They thought I was crazy. Or worse, lying. They eventually let me go, but my life was in shambles. I couldn't go back to my apartment. I couldn't face what I'd done. I moved away, changed my name, tried to start over, but I can't escape it. I see her everywhere, in my dreams, in the shadows, in the eyes of strangers. I can't escape her. I can't escape what I did. And sometimes, late at night, I think I hear her voice, whispering in the dark, I love you. Moving away was supposed to be a fresh start, a way to leave behind the madness that consumed my life. I rented a small apartment in a different city, changed my phone number, and deleted all my social media accounts. For a while it worked. I felt like I was finally free, like I could breathe again. But freedom has a way of being fleeting. It started with the nightmares. Every night I dreamt of Hannah. She was always there, standing at the foot of my bed, her eyes wild and unblinking, that twisted smile on her face. I love you, she'd whisper, over and over, until I woke up in a cold sweat. I tried everything to get rid of the nightmares. Sleeping pills, therapy, even drinking myself into a stupor, but nothing worked. She was always there, haunting my dreams, a constant reminder of what I'd done. Then the things in my apartment started to move. At first, it was small stuff. Keys going missing, pictures falling off the walls. I chalked it up to my own forgetfulness, maybe the wind. But then it got worse. Much worse. One night, I came home from work to find the word love scratched into my front door. I felt a chill run down my spine. I hadn't told anyone where I'd moved, hadn't left any trace. How could she have found me? Inside, my apartment was a mess. Furniture was overturned, dishes were smashed, and there was writing on the walls again. This time, it wasn't in blood. It was in something dark and sticky, like tar. I love you. I love you. I love you. The words were everywhere, a sickening mantra that echoed in my head. I called the police, but they found nothing. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. They suggested it might be a prank, maybe kids in the building, but I knew better. This was Hannah. Somehow she'd found me. I tried to clean up, but the writing wouldn't come off. It was like it was burned into the walls. I felt trapped, suffocated by her obsession. I started seeing her everywhere, in the shadows, in reflections, in the faces of strangers, always watching, always smiling. One night, I woke up to find her sitting at the foot of my bed again, but this time, it wasn't a dream. She was there, real and tangible, her eyes wide and unblinking. "I love you," she whispered, her voice raw and broken. "I love you so much it hurts," I screamed, jumped out of bed, but she was gone. Just like that, vanished into thin air. I was losing my mind. I didn't know what was real anymore. I started researching hauntings, looking for any explanation. I found stories about vengeful spirits, about curses and dark magic. I wondered if maybe the potion had done more than just make her love me. Maybe it had bound her soul to mine, an eternal, unbreakable connection. Desperation drove me to contact a medium. She was an old woman with piercing blue eyes and a demeanor that radiated calm. I told her everything, and she listened without judgment. She agreed to come to my apartment to try and make contact with whatever was haunting me. That night, she set up candles and incense, chanting in a language I didn't understand. I watched, heart pounding, as she called out to the spirits, asking for Hannah to show herself. The air grew thick and cold. For a moment, I thought I saw a shadow move in the corner of the room. Then the medium screamed. She fell to the floor, convulsing, her eyes rolling back in her head. I rushed to her side, trying to help, but there was nothing I could do. She was dead, just like that, gone. I called the police again, and they took her body away. They questioned me for hours, but I had no answers. After that, things got worse, much worse. I started finding more messages, more signs that Hannah was still with me. "I love you," carved into my furniture, written in the steam on the bathroom mirror, whispered in my ear when I was alone. I couldn't take it anymore. I was a wreck, barely sleeping, barely eating. I started drinking heavily, trying to drown out the voices, the visions, but nothing worked. She was always there, always watching. One night, in a drunken haze, I decided to end it. I couldn't live like this anymore. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and sat on the bathroom floor, the blade pressed against my wrist. But before I could do it, I heard her voice. "Don't," she whispered. "I love you." I dropped the knife, sobbing. I couldn't escape her. She wouldn't let me. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making, with no way out. Then the letters started. Handwritten notes left on my doorstep, in my mailbox, even inside my apartment. "I love you. I'm watching you. I'll never leave you." The handwriting was unmistakably hers. One night, I found a note that chilled me to the bone. "Together forever." Attached to it was a photo of us, taken before everything went wrong. We were smiling, happy. It was a reminder of what could have been. A cruel taunt. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go to the police again. They'd think I was crazy. Or worse, they'd lock me up. I was alone, trapped in a nightmare, with no way out. And then, one night, I woke up to find her in bed with me. She was cold, so cold, but her touch burned. "I love you," she whispered, her breath icy against my skin. "I love you so much." I screamed, pushed her away, but she was gone. I was left shaking, drenched in sweat, her words echoing in my head. I don't know how much more I can take. I'm afraid to sleep, afraid to be alone. She's always there, always watching, always waiting. I can't escape her. I can't escape the love that binds us, the potion that cursed us both. And the worst part, Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear her voice, whispering in the dark, "I love you." And deep down, a part of me still loves her too. I've lost track of how many nights I've spent staring at my ceiling, unable to sleep, terrified that if I close my eyes, she'll be there. Hannah's presence hangs over me like a dark cloud, a constant suffocating reminder of my own stupidity. I needed to find a way to end this, to break the curse, whatever it was. I was desperate enough to try anything. I went back online, searching for answers, diving deeper into the dark web. I found forums dedicated to curses, dark magic, and haunted artifacts. Most of it was bullshit, but I was desperate. I posted my story anonymously, hoping someone, anyone, could help. A few days later, I received a private message from someone named The Exorcist. He claimed he could help, that he had experience dealing with spirits and curses. I didn't care how shady it sounded. I was out of options. We arranged to meet at a motel on the outskirts of the city. The place was a dump, the kind of place where people go to disappear. Fitting, I thought, as I knocked on the door of room 23. A tall, thin man with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You must be the guy," he said, his voice raspy. "Come in." The room was dimly lit, cluttered with strange artifacts and symbols drawn on the walls. The exorcist sat me down and asked me to tell him everything, leaving out no details. As I recounted my story, his expression grew more serious. "You messed with something powerful," he said finally. "Love potions are dangerous, especially ones from the dark web. They don't just create feelings, they bind souls, permanently." "So how do I fix it?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at me with pity. "Breaking a soul bond isn't easy. It requires a ritual, and even then, there's no guarantee it will work. The bond might be too strong." I didn't care. I was willing to try anything. He laid out the steps. I'd need to gather several rare ingredients, perform a series of chants, and, most importantly, confront Hannah's spirit directly. It sounded insane, but I was beyond caring. The next few days were a blur. I gathered the ingredients, some of which were nearly impossible to find. Animal bones, rare herbs, candles made from human fat, the kind of stuff that makes you question your sanity. But I got everything and returned to the exorcist. The ritual was set for midnight. We drew a large circle on the floor with salt and placed the candles at the cardinal points. The exorcist lit them one by one, chanting in that strange language again. The air grew thick, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "Stand in the center," he instructed. I did as he said, clutching a photo of Hannah, the last thing connecting us. As the chanting grew louder, I felt a presence in the room. The temperature dropped, and the candles flickered. Suddenly, Hannah appeared in front of me, her form translucent but unmistakable. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and longing. "I love you," she whispered, reaching out to touch me. Her hand passed through me, sending a wave of cold through my body. "Speak to her," the exorcist urged. "Tell her to leave." I took a deep breath. "Hannah, you have to go. This isn't right. We can't be together like this." Her eyes filled with tears. "I can't. I love you. I need you." The exorcist began chanting louder, and Hannah screamed, a sound that chilled me to the bone. The room shook, and the candle's flames shot up, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "I love you!" she screamed, her voice echoing around the room. "I love you!" Suddenly, she lunged at me, her form passing through mine. I felt a searing pain in my chest, like my heart was being ripped out. I fell to the floor, gasping for breath as the exorcist continued his chants. When I came to, the room was silent. The candles had burned out, and the air was warm again. The exorcist was kneeling beside me, his face pale and drawn. "It's done," he said, his voice weak. "The bond is broken." I wanted to believe him, but something inside me knew it wasn't over. I could still feel her presence, lingering, watching. I stumbled out of the motel, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. No nightmares, no whispers, just silence. But the peace was short-lived. A few days later, I started seeing her again. Not as a ghost, but in my mind. I'd catch glimpses of her in reflections, hear her voice in my head. "I love you," she'd whisper, like a broken record. "I love you." I went back to the exorcist, demanding answers. He looked at me with sad eyes. "Some bonds can't be broken," he said. "The potion tied her soul to yours. Even in death, she's part of you." I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was losing my mind. I started drinking again, anything to numb the pain, but nothing worked. She was always there, a constant, haunting presence. I tried to move on, to live my life, but it was impossible. Every relationship I tried to start ended in disaster. They'd leave, saying I was distant, distracted, haunted, and they were right. I was haunted, in the truest sense of the word. One night, in a fit of desperation, I tried to end it again. I took a bottle of pills and washed them down with whiskey, hoping to finally escape. But as the darkness closed in, I heard her voice. "Don't," she whispered, her voice soft and loving. "I love you. I can't lose you." I woke up in the hospital, my stomach pumped, my life saved once again. But it wasn't a relief. It was a curse. Now, I live in a constant state of fear and sadness. I see her everywhere, feel her presence, hear her voice. I'm trapped in a nightmare of my own making with no escape. And every night, as I lie in bed, I hear her whisper in the dark, "I love you." And I know, deep down, that she always will. It's hard to explain how life becomes a constant state of dread when you know you're haunted by something you can't see, something you can't touch, something that loves you with a deadly intensity. Every second of every day, I felt her presence. She was with me at work, at the grocery store, even in the moments of fleeting happiness I tried to grasp onto. It was suffocating. My attempts to lead a normal life became increasingly futile. I started isolating myself, pushing away friends and family. They couldn't understand what I was going through, and their concerned looks and whispers only made it worse. I was alone, completely and utterly alone with the ghost of the woman I had once loved. My work performance plummeted. I could barely focus on my tasks, constantly distracted by the feeling of her eyes on me, the whispers in my ear. My boss called me into his office more than once, expressing concern and hinting that maybe I should take some time off. Eventually, they let me go, citing personal reasons. I knew what that meant. They thought I was losing my mind. Unemployment only gave me more time to obsess over Hannah. I couldn't escape her, no matter how hard I tried. I drank more, but it didn't help. The alcohol dulled my senses, but it also made her voice louder, her presence more tangible. I started seeing her more clearly, her face appearing in every reflective surface, her whispers turning into full conversations. One night, after finishing off a bottle of whiskey, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I was going to find a way to end this once and for all. I needed to find someone who could truly help me. Someone who wouldn't just perform a half-baked ritual and call it a day. I needed a real solution, no matter the cost. I went back to the dark web, searching for anything that could offer me a way out. Hours turned into days as I delved deeper into the darkest corners of the internet. Eventually, I stumbled upon a forum dedicated to extreme paranormal experiences. There, I found a user named Soul Reaper. Soul Reaper claimed to be an expert in breaking soul bonds, specializing in cases just like mine. His posts were detailed, filled with stories of successful exorcisms and severed ties. I was skeptical, but desperate. I sent him a message explaining my situation in detail. He responded almost immediately. His reply was chillingly simple. I can help you, but it will come at a cost. I didn't care about the cost. I would have given anything to be free of Hannah. We arranged a meeting, and I wired him a significant amount of money as a down payment. He sent me a list of items to gather, things that made the previous ritual seem like child's play. Blood from a black rooster, soil from a graveyard, a vial of my own blood. The list went on, each item more macabre than the last. Gathering the items was a nightmare in itself. I found myself doing things I never thought I'd be capable of. Stealing, desecrating graves, bleeding myself, all in the name of ending this curse. By the time I had everything, I was a wreck, physically and emotionally. We met in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the town. The place was cold and dark, the perfect setting for something out of a horror movie. Soul Reaper was waiting for me, a tall figure shrouded in a dark cloak. His face was hidden in the shadows, but his eyes, those piercing, inhuman eyes, glowed with an eerie light. He instructed me to lay out the items in a specific pattern, drawing a large circle with the graveyard soil. The blood from the rooster and myself was used to draw symbols within the circle. As he chanted in a language I couldn't understand, the air grew thick, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Suddenly, the candles we had placed around the circle flickered and died. The only light came from Soul Reaper's eyes, which seemed to burn with an otherworldly intensity. I felt a force pulling at me, like something was trying to rip me apart from the inside. Hannah appeared again, her form more solid than ever before. She looked at me with those sorrowful eyes, tears streaming down her face. "I love you," she whispered, reaching out to me. Her touch was like ice, sending a shock through my body. Soul Reaper's chant grew louder, more forceful. The symbols within the circle began to glow, and I felt a searing pain in my chest. It was as if my very soul was being torn apart. Hannah screamed, a sound that echoed through the warehouse, shaking the walls. "I love you," she cried, her voice filled with anguish. "Please, don't do this." But I couldn't stop. I had to see it through, no matter how much it hurt. I wanted to scream, to cry out in agony, but I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped in that moment of pure, excruciating pain. Then just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The air grew still, and the glowing symbols faded. Hannah was gone. The warehouse was silent, save for my ragged breathing. "It's done," Soul Reaper said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "The bond is broken." I should have felt relief, but all I felt was emptiness. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted and numb. Soul Reaper left without another word, disappearing into the shadows. I was alone again, but this time, truly alone. For days, I wandered through life in a daze. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The absence of Hannah was almost as unbearable as her presence had been. I had gotten so used to the constant whisper of "I love you" that its absence left a void I didn't know how to fill. But then, strange things started happening again. Objects moved on their own. Whispers filled the silence of my apartment, and shadows danced just out of sight. I thought I was losing my mind, that the trauma of everything had finally broken me. And then, one night, I saw her again. Not the ghostly, sorrowful Hannah I had known, but something darker, more malevolent. Her eyes were no longer filled with love, but with hatred, pure, unadulterated hatred. "You can't get rid of me," she hissed, her voice a twisted mockery of the love she once professed. "I will always be with you, forever." I realized then that the ritual hadn't freed me. It had changed her, twisted her love into something monstrous. I had traded one nightmare for another, and there was no escape. Now I live in constant fear, knowing that I am truly and utterly cursed. Hannah's love has turned into a relentless, malevolent force that haunts my every waking moment. I am trapped, forever bound to the darkness I unleashed. And every night, as I lie in bed, I hear her voice, a chilling whisper in the dark. "I hate you," and I know, deep down, that this nightmare will never end. Living with the malevolent presence of Hannah was a new kind of horror, one I never imagined possible. Her hatred was palpable, a dark cloud that followed me everywhere. She no longer whispered sweet nothings in my ear. Instead, she filled my mind with venom, her voice a constant reminder of my unforgivable mistake. "I hate you," she would hiss, her voice dripping with malice. I became a shell of my former self, my days blending into an endless cycle of fear and paranoia. Every shadow seemed to hold her form, every creak of the floorboards, her approaching steps. I knew I couldn't go on like this, but I was trapped, unable to see any way out. Desperation led me to a final, desperate act. I reached out to the one person I had hoped to never see again, the original seller of the love potion. I found the old thread on the dark web, the same one that had started this nightmare. I posted a plea for help, detailing my torment in agonizing detail. To my surprise, I received a response almost immediately. The seller, going by the name Heartbreaker, offered to meet me in person, claiming they had a solution. I was skeptical, but I had no other options. We arranged to meet in a rundown diner on the edge of the city. The diner was nearly empty when I arrived, the flickering neon sign casting eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. Heartbreaker was already there, sitting in a booth at the back, their face hidden beneath a dark hood. I sat across from them, my heart pounding in my chest. "You've made quite a mess," they said, their voice cold and detached. "But I can help you, for a price." I didn't care about the cost. I just wanted my life back. I handed over a wad of cash, more money than I could afford, but it didn't matter. Heartbreaker took it without a word, then handed me a small vial filled with a black, viscous liquid. "This is the counter potion," they explained. "It will sever the bond completely, but it comes with a risk. If the bond is too strong, it could kill you both." I didn't hesitate. I took the vial and left, not daring to look back. At home, I prepared for the final confrontation. I drank the potion, feeling the bitter liquid burn its way down my throat. The air around me grew heavy, and I felt a sense of impending doom. Hannah appeared almost immediately, her form more solid and terrifying than ever. Her eyes burned with hatred, and her voice was a guttural snarl. "You think you can escape me?" she hissed. "You belong to me." I felt the potion take hold, a searing pain spreading through my chest. I fell to the floor, convulsing, as the room filled with a blinding light. Hannah screamed, a sound of pure agony that shook the very walls. Her form twisted and contorted, her face a mask of rage and pain. For a moment, I thought I was going to die. The pain was unbearable, and I felt my consciousness slipping away. But then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The light faded, and the room fell silent. I lay on the floor, gasping for breath. Hannah was gone. The air was still. The oppressive weight lifted. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. It took me a while to gather the strength to stand. I looked around the room, half expecting her to reappear, but there was nothing, just silence. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashing water on my face, trying to steady my trembling hands. As I stared at my reflection, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I had done it. I had finally freed myself from Hannah's torment, but the cost had been high. I had lost everything. My job, my friends, my sanity. I was a broken man, haunted by the memories of what I had done. In the days that followed, I tried to piece my life back together. It wasn't easy. The scars ran deep, and I knew I would never be the same, but I was free. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling the weight of her presence. I moved again, this time to a small town far away from the city. I needed a fresh start, a place where I could try to rebuild my life. It was a slow process, but bit by bit, I began to heal. Yet some nights, as I lie in bed, I still hear her voice, faint and distant, like a lingering echo. I love you, and I wonder if I'll ever truly escape the darkness I brought into my life. But I have to try. I have to believe there is a way forward, a future free from the ghosts of my past. I live each day with the hope that one day I will find peace. And maybe, just maybe, I'll learn to forgive myself for the terrible mistake that started it all.